What's up, everyone, and welcome back to The Perspective, a show where we tackle paranormal and supernatural claims, belief in aliens, conspiracy theories, Bigfoot, pretty much anything you want to call us with. We will talk to you about it. My name's Ethan, and your hosts for the evening are Richard Gilliver and student Dr. Ben. How you guys doing?
I'm okay. I'm full of cold, in which I am fully blaming Laura McGee for, because I was talking to her last night, and because she's 5,000 miles away and she was full of cold, it's obviously transmitted over the airwaves into my body.
And I'm not full of cold, but I'm full of caffeine. So let's do this thing, I guess.
Awesome. Well, dude, our lines are already full. We've got 6 callers. So there is, like, I got to wait for them to get screened, but there is one in the queue that I know I spoke to personally, wants to talk about Sasquatch. So we've got, wait, where did it go? Where did it go? Okay, I'm going to bring on Jesse. Jesse, you are on with Richard and student Dr. Ben. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Very good, thank you. Thank you for calling.
So, I had a sighting about 6 years ago up in the Sierra Nevadas, and I saw two creatures that I still trying to wrap my head around what I saw.
Okay, so can you describe them?
Go ahead, what?
Oh, sorry. Can you describe them? What you saw?
The male, and I only know he was a male because he wasn't erect, but you could definitely tell his male appendage. Was about 12 feet tall, 4 feet wide at the shoulders, and every bit of 1,200 pounds. The female was about 7.5 feet tall and about 3 foot wide at the shoulders, and at least 5, maybe 600 pounds.
Okay. So can we put some context? Can we put some context to this a little bit? So you're in the Sierra Nevadas and you see these two creatures that are very big. And obviously one was male, one was female. What else was going on? What were you doing in the Sierra Nevadas? Kind of tell us the story a little bit of what happened.
Yeah, so a couple of days before, I went to my doctor and I got some bad news from the doctor. They saw something on a scan and I was pretty rattled. So I decided to do what I love doing, which is go hiking. So I packed up a bag with water, apples, dog treats, and I grabbed my dog and my pistol, and we headed up to the mountains to do a day hike. And I usually try to head up about 5 a.m. so that way I can get up there right before the sun starts to actually rise and get up there before it gets too hot. And we drove up as far as the road could possibly take us, and then I found a dirt road and turned onto that. And when it got to the point where I didn't feel comfortable driving a two-wheel drive, I pulled over as far as I could and got out and started hiking. And my dog's pretty good. She doesn't usually need a leash. She pretty much stays right by me. And we went up for about 3 miles or so. And it was about 3 hours of hiking, so I guess that was about 3 miles. And my dog alerted me to something, and there was this big manzanita bush right in front of us, about 15, 20 feet away. And my dog did something that I've never seen her do before. She, hair standing up on her back, tail went immediately between her legs, and she would not move forward. At first, I thought it was a bear or maybe a wild pig or something like that. So I started hollering in case it was asleep or something. I didn't want to startle it and like come up on it real quick. And all of a sudden, this female thing stands up from behind this bush and it's got its eyes locked on me. I got my eyes locked on it. My dog immediately pisses itself out of fear. I don't know what to do at this point. I know I have my gun, but it doesn't think to myself to, grab it and shoot. It felt like an eternity standing there looking at each other. And that's when my dog again alerted me that there's something else, and it looks off to the left, and I didn't want to take my eyes off of what was in front of us, but I knew I should if my dog's alerting to it. And I look up the hill, and there's this big towering black figure, and it comes charging down the hill towards us. And again, by the size, my pistol's not going to do anything to it. Not at that distance. It started about 100 yards away, coming down the hill. Wasn't running, but it was moving quickly. And I just curled into a fetal position on top of my dog because I was afraid, if this thing's a bear, or I don't know what it is. I want to kill my dog.
Okay, so what did you do after that? So if you curled up on top of your dog, how did the situation resolve?
So basically, I ended up trying to reposition myself, and my dog took off running. And when I looked up, they were standing next to each other, just staring at me. And eventually they just turned and walked away. I laid there in my own pee and my dog's pee for about 2 minutes before I had the shakes under control enough to be able to get to my feet. I still don't know what they are. I mean,
can I just ask what, I'm from Britain, and we don't, Britain's very, 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 very small compared to the US. So what kind of terrain? What time was it? What was the light like? Was it heavily forested? Was there just a couple of bushes around and the rest scrubland? Can you talk us through the actual your surroundings?
Yeah, so it's a heavy forested area. It was probably about 11 o'clock in the morning, 10:30, 11, somewhere around there. We were on a old logging road. I don't think it's in use anymore, judging by its condition, and the trees around there are mostly old growth. And I mean, big old trees and bushes here and there, and it's mostly mountains. There's no one up there. There's no houses up there. There's no.
Right. Thank you.
There's nothing up there.
I picked up on something you said earlier, and I appreciate the amount of courage it's taken for you to call in and share this story publicly. I really do. So please bear that in mind when I ask this next question. But you said earlier, when you saw the figure coming down the hill, you didn't know what it was. You didn't know if it was a bear or what it was. How have you jumped from that to possibly being Bigfoot? What in your mind has moved from don't know what it is, possibly bear, to Bigfoot?
Bears in our area aren't that big, and they don't typically walk downhill on 2 feet. And bears typically have a long and elongated snout, and this had a human-looking face. It had hands like a person. It had feet like a person.
So besides seeing the forms themselves, Was there any other evidence around that they had been there? Did you find tracks? Did you find hair samples? Is there anything else that would signify that their presence happened?
So I did find tracks, 2 sets. The largest were 18 inches in length, about 9 inches in width. The smaller set was about 14 inches by 7. And there was a puddle of blood behind the manzanita bush. Why there was a puddle of blood, I don't know.
So did you found all that stuff after the encounter happened, or did you find that before the encounter happened?
After.
Okay. Have you been back to the place since this happened?
Not by myself. I went up once with someone else, and I mean, I've never seen any other people up there. I've just seen a lot of wildlife.
Okay, so have you seen any? If you saw the tracks during the encounter, you were there the first time. Have you seen any tracks since then? The second time that you went with somebody else, did you find any similar tracks?
Yes, we went up in wintertime and found a set of tracks in the snow.
Okay, and were these tracks, did they seem to look like a paw, or did they seem to look more like a human foot? What can you describe the shape? Because I know you described the size of the tracks.
So they had 5 toes, distinct toes, no claws, and they looked like a human footprint, but extremely large. And as far as I know, Shaquille O'Neal's not running barefoot in the snow. That just, people don't go barefoot in the snow. So I don't know what to make of it other than it's a human type footprint.
So something that like really stood out to me in the story, and I totally believe that you had this experience and that this is a meaningful event that happened to you. There is something that stood out though, in that you had mentioned early on that you were given a shocking piece of news from your doctor around that time. How close to the encounter was that appointment with your doctor?
3 days, about 3 days
About 3
before.
days. Because the human brain is very odd, and especially with things related to bad news, even if it's not anything related to like a terminal disease or anything, because we know that things can happen psychologically when you have a terminal diagnosis, but you can have some psychological things come up even with something that just changes your outlook on the rest of your life. Even a chronic disease can drastically change how you view the world, and it can almost present like grief in a similar way. And we know that the brain does funny things when you're grieving. So I'm not saying that, I don't want to say anything to disregard your experience, but I do want to investigate a little bit of talking through if we have this idea that this might be a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot. I'm going to leave that in as a possibility. So let's think of other potential possibilities that this could be. So if I were to just list off everything that I can think of, and Richard and you, the caller, can help out with this, let's kind of brainstorm what else could have caused this experience to happen, and then we can address each one step by step and kind of figure out how we would investigate it further. Does that sound all right?
Okay. Yeah.
So my goal here isn't to necessarily sit here and debunk what you're saying, because we're truth seekers here, right? If this is true, I want to know that it's true. I want to be able to communicate effectively with other people. So the goal here is, if it is true, then going forward into other conversations, we all can have productive conversations about it and effectively communicate the evidence of it. And then on the flip side, if it turns out that there might be a more reasonable explanation, we can also explore that. So, because I think I speak for Richard as well in saying that if it is true, I would love to be convinced of it. So,
well, I certainly was.
yeah, I bet, and I don't doubt your experience at all. So I have my handy dandy whiteboard here because I'm at my last time I was here, I wasn't at my house, but so let's kind of think through what we got. So we got Bigfoot / Sasquatch as an option. But what else could it be besides that? What other possibilities can we think of?
Shaq running around barefoot.
Biggest person.
The world's biggest person. So we got the world's biggest person / Shaquille O'Neal running around barefoot in the snow. Richard's going to say that. So we got Shaq barefoot. We got biggest person in the world. What else? What other things can we think of?
An unusually large bear for that area.
Okay, we got a large bear. Any other ideas?
Somehow a gorilla escaped from the zoo and was able to travel 300 miles up into the mountains undetected.
Okay, so we got a gorilla. Anything else? Is there anything that you can think of that might cause you to misremember what had happened? Because you said it was 6 years ago, right?
Correct.
So is there anything looking back that, because our brains love to add details, the more we think about something, and especially rationalizing something in our heads after it had already happened, it's very easy to go back and say, oh, this might have been connected in this way. And we do that with many things in our lives. But is there a possibility that that might have happened?
No.
No? Why not?
No. Because I wrote down exactly what happened that day.
Did you write it down immediately at the time that it happened, or was it a few hours in between?
A few hours in between.
Okay, can you remember kind of your heart rate during the time that it happened?
Oh, I was afraid.
Yeah.
So I would say it was that. I was afraid.
Yeah. So the brain does some funny things when we're under a lot of stress. So is there a possibility that some details might have been missed, or that maybe the perception of the event was more exaggerated than what was taking place? Is that a possibility?
I don't think so.
Right, we seem to
possibility.
I'm going to share something with you now. I'm comfortable sharing it with you. I don't need any sympathy. I'll just put that out there because I don't want to detract from the conversation. But I've literally, in this last couple of weeks, just lost my mum. I got the news suddenly. It was unexpected, and it took me. I'm still processing it now. I'm still trying to go through. I still can't actually believe that she's not here anymore. In fact, I was going to call her today. I picked my phone up to call her, and my head just went, well, she's not here anymore. And it takes that amount of time to come to terms and process, bad news in our brains, as it did today when I picked my phone up to call my mum. it takes us that time to process things. Now, if you're going out 3 days into the mountains and you've already told us categorically that you weren't sure what this thing was, or these two things were.
Not at first. When I first saw it, I wasn't sure what I was seeing, because what I was seeing should not exist.
So what specifically was it that made you jump? We need to move on. We need to move on shortly. But I just want to kind of get, before you go, what specifically was it that made you jump from I don't know what this is to this is definitively Bigfoot?
So the way I look at it is, when you see something that shouldn't exist and a bear doesn't fit, especially the way it looked. People aren't made that big. Shaquille O'Neal isn't that tall or that wide or that heavy. People don't have feet that big. People don't leave impressions into hardpan. Everything that I saw, only one thing fits with it, and it's something that a lot of people claim exist, but science doesn't recognize yet.
So with something especially that can be equated to an animal, because even if it has hominid characteristics, that would make it fit in with mammals and with other animals. Why don't we have any of these in captivity?
Well, my theories, I have two on that, is I fully believe that our government knows about them. Fully believe.
Now we're getting into even more exciting areas.
So if the government knows about this, how come the government would be, especially something that's out there in nature, how come, number one, they're able to hide it, and also what would that do for them? What would hiding a species of animal do for them?
Well, do you remember what happened when people found out about an owl in the eastern United States? It shut down the entire logging industry in that part of the world for an owl.
Because it was endangered? Was it an endangered owl?
Because it was an endangered owl. So you're talking about a species that has gone unrecognized by science, which would immediately put it on the endangered species list, because we don't know how many there are.
Hold on. So how come, if it's an endangered species, if this is some kind of creature that is out there that we don't have many of, how come science isn't trying to preserve it?
I think the reason why science doesn't try to preserve it is because of the ridicule and the tabooness of it. So,
but would they still be ridiculed for it if they were able to capture one in the wild and bring it back into captivity? Or because that would be pretty clear evidence for me if we had a museum or a zoo or something that had one of these and we were able to study it, that would be evidence for most of us.
Yeah, I mean, that would be evidence for most of us. I mean, if they just released a body, that would be evidence for most of us. I mean, they do have DNA for it. They do have sightings of it. They do have footprints. They have casts. They have hair samples. They have blood samples.
How come
Can I just sorry, Ben, I just need to interject here just 1 minute. The hair samples, in every case that I know of, where the hair samples from around the world, not just the US, from the Yeti in the Himalaya, every case I know of, the hair samples, skull samples that they've claimed from the Yeti, in every single case it's turned out to be a species of bear. Every single case that it's actually been tested has turned out to be a species of bear. So, and these are from people who are absolutely convinced that what they saw was a Bigfoot or a Yeti or some other kind of large hominid, unrecognized hominid. And in every single case, so it shows that's definitive evidence that people misremember what they've seen. These people were absolutely convinced, just as you were.
I don't know about every piece of evidence. I mean, the Ketchum DNA.
I didn't say every piece of evidence. I said every air sample that had been tested.
Okay. Well, the Ketchum DNA sample doesn't come back as a bear.
I'm not familiar with that particular case, unfortunately. I'd love to kind of come back at you, but
yeah, the Ketchum DNA sample comes back as partially unknown.
So do you think if we have this DNA sample, if that DNA sample is from something that we've never seen before, is it entirely out of the picture that we wouldn't be able to use that DNA to track it? Because we're really, really good at using DNA to track animals, to track people. I'm confused about how this possibility of it being an unknown species is more likely than we don't have one.
I don't think it is an unknown species. And that's the problem, is I don't believe it's an unknown species. Why in 1965 did the Army Corps of Engineers, when they did a mapping of Washington State, list it as a native animal on their maps? Why did the U.S. Army do that if it doesn't exist?
Because humans aren't perfect, and sometimes they say funny things.
Why would certain states put in their actual laws and make an actual law?
We're kind of going down another avenue here, which I would absolutely love to talk to you about. But we are running out of time on this call. We need to get to other callers. Please phone back either next week or sometime in the future when you can, and let's go down that avenue, because we seem to have drifted somewhat from your experience to kind of some kind of grandiose cover up, and I want to explore that with you in much more detail on its own, without kind of the Sasquatch thing getting in the way. So if you can, please call us back in the future. I really appreciate you calling in. It's been absolutely amazing. Sorry, go on.
Call back when Brainbug is on, because Brainbug teaches about this on their channel quite frequently, and I'm sure this would be an amazing conversation to have.
Yeah, and I think Brainbug is on next week, so if you could call back in next week, that'd be amazing.
I will do my best.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your time. We'll speak to you again soon.
Yeah, have a good night.
You too.
Wow, that was Ben. What are your thoughts?
There's a lot to unpack there, and I think that was a very productive discussion for the most part. I think that there's a lot more we can address with that, but I really appreciate that call. That was a fun call.
Yeah, it was, and I'd love if one thing I did mean to ask him, and I'd love him if he's still watching, I'd love him to bring this to the table next week, is if he had any kind of photos, if he took any photos, or when he went back out with his friends afterwards, did he go with the intent of seeing this creature again? And did he go equipped? So he said he saw a footprint. Did he take a photograph of that footprint or some kind of sample from it? But anyway, are you ready for the next call?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Let's go. Okay. We're going to be talking to Joe. Is that right?
Yes, this is Joe.
Okay, what would you like to talk about, Joe?
Well, I've done studying for ufology for about a little bit over 10 years. I just kind of wanted to bring up one of the new things that I was actually researching, which is what I call predator. Now, in ET, it's different types that people have talked about. The predator is something new that has come up recently. I know NIDS, which is part of Bigelow's team before. I think they're the ones that actually made it known to the public. And then just recently, Jaime Maussan actually covered one of them on video. I believe it was in Mexico City. Now, this predator, basically what it is very interesting. It seems to float. It's kind of like invisible, but you can still see it. Has a little kind of like a Christmas tree type of invisibility, where it have like different colors illuminating. It's been captured in a couple of videos, and I'm glad to share that to you if you like later on. Which is very interesting. This is very interesting because it's very different from the standard ET that we have known. And like I said, it was first documented back in the NIDS team that discovered it as a form of appearing and then disappearing in their sites. It's just something that I kind of wanted to bring up.
Do we have any official documentation of this? Any official military documentation of it?
Now, military is very difficult. I mean, the good thing is that Trump passed, when Trump was in office, he passed the coronavirus relief, which is now releasing a lot of these documents it's a whole ton of documents, including when Biden passed his in March. We're getting more and more documents. Now, it's very hard because most of these documents that are documented as far as ETs or UAPs, which is unknown area phenomenon, it's mostly the standard stuff that we're already used to. But as far as this one that's called that I call the predator, and the only reason we call it that is because it's something that it's camouflaged. It seems to be like a predatorial being. And from what I remember in the NIDS team, because this is like the only official, other than Jaime Maussan's videos, this is the only official document that we know. It seems to have like if this is correct, it seems to have like a sort of a dinosaur type of foot when it would step. And then some of them just don't even leave a trace, kind of like if it's floating, which is very interesting. I mean, the thing is that we know very little about, but it's so interesting because this is a very different type of ET, if it is so.
Joe, can I just
that
jump
we're
back?
just barely.
Sorry, can I just jump back in a little minute? I didn't quite get a clear answer from you regarding this particular ET. Do we actually have official documentation about this specific ET from the military?
I can't come up with one. I know there might be some out there with the new documentation that are coming up.
So no, then
the trouble of
I'm not trying to be rude or cut you off, but I'm trying to be specific because we need to, when we're talking about something like this, we need to separate potential from what we actually know.
Yeah.
So in this particular case, we don't have any documentation from the military at present time.
No. Well, that's the thing, because like I said, we have to find it with the government. I have to look into it and see if I can find it. From what I know, official documentation, yeah, we do have from the NIDS team. From their team, we do.
About this specific event?
Yes. They're actually the first ones who.
That's documentation you could send to us so that we could have a look at it.
Yeah, it was a part of Skinwalker Ranch. That's actually where it took place. And it's a part of Bigelow's team, which is a NIDS team. I believe it's a National Institute of Discovery and Science.
Right. If you could send us that, I'd really love to have a look at that. So if you could send us that, send that to Ethan, and I promise you I will look at that because I'm really interested in, my thing is looking at the corroborative evidence, and if there's official documentation I'd like to, from the government or from the military, I'd love to have a look at that and see specifically what it says.
Well, I'd also love to know if there's independent sources for this too, such as because of course, if we had some government or military documentation, that's great. But something that if you have something that is scientifically verifiable, right, it's going to be able to be replicated by private entities as well and other scientists. Anyone should be able to find the same evidence, correct? So I'd love to see, I mean, as many documents as possible, see where they're coming from and kind of go from there.
Yeah, and also,
yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, Joe, I just want to pick up on something that you said earlier, because you said this ET, if that's what it is. So bearing that in mind, why do you come to the conclusion ET? If you're not sure, what is it that leads you to take that next step to say extraterrestrial?
Yeah, well, see, with Skinwalker Ranch, if anybody who knows Skinwalker Ranch, there has been a lot of UAP phenomena, and UAP, and also a lot of different kinds of things going on, which is stuff that, like dire wolves. There's been sightings of dire wolves and other stuff like that. Now, and I see it in that way because I know that we have technology with invisibility. Don't ask me how, but I've been in the military, so I know that exists. Now I see that because it could be.
Sorry, I just need to pick up on that. I know I keep jumping in quite a lot. I am quite pedantic sometimes. Sorry. The military technology we have is not technically invisibility. It's what it does is it tends to have a camera on the front and a camera on the back.
Yeah.
And it takes an image from the back and puts it on the front, so it's actually displacing what the viewer sees. So it's more like an illusion, optical illusion, as opposed to tech, like what we would class as invisibility.
Yes, of course. Yeah, and I mean it's exactly what you said. It's like an illusion, and that's what I'm saying. It's very. I mean, it could be something robotic. It could be something, man-made, I guess. Now, this was covered by scientists when it was with the NIDS team, but it's something unknown because, of course, we cannot definitely prove it. We don't have something to actually grab it and actually, say for sure of what it is, and that's why I said it that way, because it could be a speculation of
you know what, and I take my hat off to you for that, because that is a very, very important thing to do. It's so important to say that I do not know what this is, but the interesting thing is that the kind of the line of difference between your assumptions and what I accept here is that you're taking that extra step and you believe it to be an ET, or at least you appear to believe it to be an ET. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't want to put words into your mouth. But I'm very interested in why that extra step is being taken. What separates you taking that extra step from me taking it?
So, I mean, it's like I mentioned, it's because we do not definitely know what it is. I know other than the NIDS team, it's Jaime Maussan's private investigation. And I know from what their consensus is, it's an ET. And that's what we think it is. And of course, like I said, it's just something that we don't know for sure, but it's something that has come up recently. It's and I know it makes it particularly kind of like scary to some people, because it's almost like an invisibility cloak that it covers itself in. So that's what's.
I don't think it's scary. I think it's exciting.
So I have a thought. I mean, this is a little bit of a tangent, but going back to when you were describing the footprints of these, you described it almost like a dinosaur footprint. So if we're taking the leap and saying that this is an extraterrestrial, how come these extraterrestrials have footprints or anatomical features that are very consistent with creatures that we see on this planet.
And that's very weird. You know, I agree with you, because normally before I even started believing in ETs, I do not believe that they would have features like us or like anything of this earth. It would be completely different to what we're known or used to. Now, why it would have that, I have no idea. That's only what's documented and what was told to us from the NIDS team. So that's what we have going off of.
So how come instead of exploring that it might be something, just a new species of lizard, of dinosaur, of bird with that kind of footprint, how come we jumped to this is something not of this world that happens to have features like things that we see on this world? How do we make that leap?
Sorry, and can I just interrupt? And sorry, I just need to point out that I Got Cookies has very kindly given $10 and says Bigfoot calls. Secular Rarity $5. Ben and Richard are awesome. Two of the coolest guys out there. He's too kind, creep. Ameet Mathew $10. Get the chopper. Sorry, I just needed to interrupt for that.
No problem. You know, Skinwalker Ranch is one of the probably the most interesting spot in the world, and is very confusing because, like I mentioned, we see everything from direwolves, from like dinosaur type creatures, to this what we believe is a creature. It's a whole various things that goes on in that ranch, or at least it did in the 1990s. It's hard to say what anything is without knowing what it is, or at least having the body of it. This is only speculation from what the scientists at NIDS covered up. And it's very fascinating. Like I said, I mean, where we got the prints and what we've seen, like everything from dinosaurs and direwolves that are, you know, have not been here for a while, and including UAPs. Actually, I think this new show that came up in the History Channel, I believe it's called.
Hold on, can I stop you for a second? I just have a question.
Mm-hmm.
How come all of this wide range of diverse creatures, how come they're all in one location?
Now,
how come we don't see them other places?
Research, from my research, well, there's a whole lot to it. I researched quite a bit into this. This area is very interesting because we had fallout from the nuclear sites that were pretty close of radiation. There's also things in the ground which give off a lot of, I believe if I remember it correctly, my illness kind of affects my memory, but there's a lot of plates in the bottom that may mess with the magnetation. There's a lot of things going on there. Now, before, where there was actually people living there, that I believe it was the Shermans, they reported kind of like ETs, ET craft, UAPs, even taking some of these creatures and kind of like teleporting them out. Now, from what I understand, if I put two and two together, you actually like there's a lot of stuff in here. But from what it seems like something is go ahead.
Right. How come in other places with radiation, how come we don't see the same things happening?
Like I said, there's a lot of stuff here that may take more than an hour to explain. It's very hard to say for sure what it is. We're still learning.
We do have shows every week.
Do we have evidence that, because here's the thing. So it's very easy to speculate and say that this amount of radiation would cause these mutations and cause these strange creatures to appear. But could we design a study that would determine a causal relationship between the radiation or the other factors involved and the creatures that we're seeing there? Is there a way we could study that?
Well, absolutely. I think it's actually being studied right now. Like I said, with the History Channel, they have their own team right now with that is studying that. And
who is this team made up of?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Who is this team made up of the History Channel? Because the History Channel, let's say, may have a vested interest in getting sensationalist things on the TV to get viewers in. So we could very easily say that they may be biased. So who specifically is in this team that the History Channel's getting together? Which areas of expertise? What are the credentials?
Yeah, I wish I had my computer here so I can actually kind of give you the names and stuff. But I know one of them was very skeptical as far as this, because he did not believe any of this stuff. And I forgot if he is. I think he's an astrophysicist. I don't remember his name. I believe it was Tyler. I don't remember his last name. But a very, very well-known astrophysicist. He's helping a lot of the other investigators come up with answers on this. Now, like I said, I can only speculate on what I think. I believe that there's something happening which is coming to this time frame, because we're getting stuff from, like I said, dire wolves haven't been around for thousands of years. And I'm guessing that the UAP is appearing and putting them probably back in where they're putting them, because some of the videotapes and video footage that we've seen, they come out of a portal from what we've seen, and then they exit like in the portal, and the portal may be night and we're in the daytime, and then vice versa. And that's
do you know what, Joe, sorry for interrupting again. You've done exactly what the last caller did, and towards the end of the call, just taking it in a really interesting direction, where we could go on for another hour easily, just talking to you.
Yeah, of course.
We do need to move on to the next caller. Can you phone back, please? Because again, you've touched on so many different interesting aspects that I'd really like to dive into deeply. And again, next week we've got Brainbug on. I'm sure they would love to talk to you about the direwolf aspect of it. See, there's so many great hosts on this show, and everyone can bring something different to the table and has a different area of expertise. So I'd love for you to call in again when Brainbug's on. If you can possibly call back next week, talk about the direwolf aspect of it. That'd be amazing. But in the meantime, we do absolutely appreciate your call. It's been wonderful talking to you. And, please let us... have you got any final things you'd like to say before we let you go?
No, I mean, if you like, I do have quite a bit of evidence and videos and stuff. I can send you some of that, and if you want to review.
Yeah, please, that'd be amazing. Yeah, that would be really amazing.
Yeah, once I get my resources and stuff, I'll send that to you. That should be no problem.
Thank you. That's amazing, and thank you so much for your time. We'll speak to you again soon.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Ben, your thoughts?
Yeah, again, there's a lot to unpack there, and I do think this is another great call for Brainbug, because again, they've been covering this kind of thing on their channel. So I want to definitely watch that episode when all these people call back in.
Yeah. You do realize Bree's going to kill me because we just keep throwing all these calls to them for next week, don't we?
Oh, no, they're excited about it.
Right. Okay, so we're ready for the next call?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, Chad, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. How you guys doing?
Really well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well tonight. I'm doing really well.
Good. What would you like to talk about, Chad?
Well, I was more or less wanting to. I reached out to the show, I think last week, made some comments, and then Ethan reached out to me and encouraged me to call the show. So I figured I'd give you guys a call tonight, and I believe it was on the something about how do I know that God exists?
Okay.
Is that what it was?
It's your call. You can talk about whatever you'd like to talk about.
Well, one of the things that it seems as though talking with atheists is they will talk about, prove that God exists. Can you show proof? And so one of the things with that is even as a Christian myself, faith-based biblical worldview, I would claim that I have a biblical worldview. I would say that it's impossible for me to show anybody the existence of God, because faith being something that's not within us, but faith is something outside of us. And so one of the things that Ethan asked me earlier was about the presuppositional approach versus evidential. So in other words, I could sit here and try to prove evidence. I could talk to you about, and we could even look at historical sites. We can look at documents. We can look at all this stuff to try to prove evidence, but and still that a person would still not believe all the evidence, because again, faith is something outside, not inside. So I guess
I know you want to talk about presuppositionalism, but do you consider that other stuff as evidence? Would you consider that convincing? If you didn't have this, if you were coming at it from, say, if you were an atheist or if you were a Muslim or a Hindu or some other tradition, and you saw that that evidence for the Christian Bible through history, through the different things that you've just mentioned, would that convince you as a non-Christian to become Christian, that evidence on its own?
Well, yeah, the evidence didn't convince me. It was something that my eyes were opened, I guess I would say. So I was given spiritual insight to see.
But do you think it
wasn't
would
something
convince
that
you?
I conjured up in my own heart or my own mind, I guess.
Chad, do you think it would convince you if you weren't a Christian?
I'm not sure. Probably not.
Right.
If it weren't,
Okay.
if God didn't give me the ability to have faith, no, I wouldn't have. I would probably still be left in unbelief and
No, that's fine.
wanting people to prove.
All I wanted to do is I just wanted to establish whether you thought that evidence without that faith was good enough to convince someone. That's all I was trying to do. I wasn't trying to trip you up in any way. I just wanted to find out.
Okay.
So that's
on the balance. Go on, Ben.
That's an interesting point, though. So you said that your eyes were opened and you were given the ability to have faith. Is faith something that, like, and you said it was outside of yourself. So do we get to choose if we have faith?
No.
So then if there's no choice in the matter, my disbelief or my lack of faith isn't my fault.
Correct.
So then if it's not my fault, and if God's the only one that can give me the ability to have faith, then what's the point in convincing me about it or trying to?
Right, which I kind of wonder then, even like in debates, like I've watched several debates, and the point is really who wins the debate. I mean, there's really no winner, I would say. Is it the person who speaks, who speaks better, or how do we determine who wins the debate? Because it seems as though all the debates I've watched, I've kind of walked away with, okay, both sides present their case and present, what they're saying, but then when you walk away, who really won the debate? It's almost as if the debate, no one really wins a debate. It seems like to me.
Well, a debate isn't evidence. A debate is communication. It's a battle of two people communicating, and oftentimes the winner of the debate is the person who has the best rhetoric, and rhetoric does not equal evidence. Your ability to communicate something and to convince somebody doesn't mean that you have evidence. So I don't think I'd use debate as a metric for truth necessarily. Would you?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, it seems as though that's what, like the existence of God or something. So a debate will be on like the existence of God. So then it'll be one person, usually the theistic person, the theist, is the one trying to convince the atheist that there is a God.
I mean, yes,
right?
That's correct. Yes.
And then usually the atheist turns around and says, well, no matter what's presented, they'll say, well, that there's no, they'll basically like explain it away, or they'll say, well, you really haven't proved anything. And so for me, for instance, my case would be the only thing I can share with you is what I've experienced, right? But then they'll say, well, experience is not proof, right? They'll say experience is not proof. But that's the only way I can express.
Do you think experience
me, I guess.
Do you think experience is good evidence?
No, because our experiences change all the time.
Right.
Like our experience and feelings constantly change. Just like science is always changes. It's always what we would say evolving, right?
I mean, kinda. I mean, science just doesn't change on kind of a whim and is less prone to making mistakes in our experiences. But I'm kind of interested in if you don't think, this call is really actually because religion's my thing. So no disrespect to the other callers. So this one's really interesting to me because you're bringing, even as a pre-up, a really unique perspective, which I really appreciate. But if you're not convinced, if you don't think that the biblical evidence, the kind of what we'd find in history or archaeology or etc., is enough to convince you, and by your own admission, personal experience shouldn't be enough to convince you, what is it that convinces you?
That's where I would say it's God who gives us the faith, or gives someone the faith, gives someone the ability to believe. So that's where I'm saying that the faith is not within us. The faith is outside of us, and it becomes almost like put into us from an outside source. God being outside of space, time, God being eternal, God existing eternally. So he is the one who infuses or brings the faith into us to give us the ability to believe.
How can you determine the difference between what you experience and believe is God giving it you from outside and your own personal experience? What is it that differentiates those two things?
Let's see. What differentiates between what I experience and what?
Because
it's like
let me try and explain what the question is trying to address. If your experience is untrustworthy as a measure of truth, and yet you're experiencing what you believe to be faith from God, how can you differentiate the experience that you're having from the actual faith in God? Because it seems to me that even if it is, let's just say for 1 second, it is the faith in God, it is God's grace which has given you this evidence. It's that evidence is coming through as experience, and yet experience itself is not good enough to count as evidence. So what outside of experience?
I guess I'd say the evidence is there first, and then the experience follows the evidence. Like when I'm on vacation and I'm sitting on the beach, for instance, and I look out over the water and I look up at the stars or the sky or whatever, the evidence is there. And then I'm like in awe, like I have this experience, like that's amazing that God, spoke this into existence. And so it's an act of worship at that point, right? I'm worshiping, I'm praising God, and I'm just amazed at his creation. So I'm responding, or I'm having some emotional response as a result of, the
not
sea or something like that. So I would say the evidence is first, and then my feelings or my experience follows the.
So
that's not particularly unique to Christianity, though, is it? That feeling of awe and inspiration. Sorry, Ben.
Yes. No, I have a question. Because I love that we have two very different brains here on this panel. Because we got Richard, who really likes to talk about religion. I'm a scientist, so we approach things very differently, and it's great to have two different perspectives on it. I have some questions for you about evidence. So you said that you look up at the stars, and that's evidence. Is evidence the same as intuition?
I would say intuition, or and that kind of goes back to the presupposition, the intuition, or what I would say our conscience. The conscience is, and I would say that all of us are created in the image of God. So we are created in the likeness of God. So we are all created as moral creatures. We're all created with a sense of awareness of God, so to speak, or like what you would say an intuition, or an awareness, or a conscience.
Can I ask you a question? Have you ever been in a situation where maybe you've had a friend or an acquaintance that you suspected was doing something mean to you behind your back, maybe starting some drama with somebody else, talking mean about you, doing something that wasn't great? Have you ever had something like that happen, and then not really have evidence for it, but just have this feeling of, oh, I just know that something is going on, and then maybe it turned out to not be true?
Yeah.
Are there times when those intuitions and feelings can not be reliable?
Yeah, for sure.
So then if the intuition is unreliable, how do we become confident in that? And then how do we demonstrate if it's true? If intuition can be flawed, is that good evidence?
Well, I would say, kind of going back to what you're talking about, when you're talking about like having that feeling, or our feelings can definitely lead us astray, for sure. So in other words, like, for instance, let's just say work, right? I get up and I go to work, or let's say you have a job and you go to work, right? You might wake up and you feel as though, I don't feel like going to work, but you do it anyway. So why do you go to work anyway? Why would you not live by your feelings and go to work, rather than just say, well, I don't feel like going to work, so I'm going to stay in bed today?
Because I have very realistic consequences of, I'm going to lose my job if I don't go, or I'm going to lose a paycheck if I don't go, or I'm going to disappoint other people who rely on me. So there are some tangible reasons I will realistically experience those consequences if I don't do that. So I don't think this is a fair analogy.
Okay. I was just trying to come up with a way to explain it, I guess. But
fair enough.
But what I'm trying to say is our feelings can, our feeling, we need to, what I would say is I need to line my feelings up with objective truth, which God has revealed himself. So I align my feelings up with his truth.
So if the intuition isn't reliable, then how do we, I guess first I should ask, what is your confidence that what you're saying is true?
My confidence would be in the scripture.
So how confident on a scale of 1 to 100% would you say you are that this is reality?
That scripture is reality?
That any of this, that faith is outside of us, that God is real. What's your confidence level in that?
Oh, I would say 100%.
So if intuition is not reliable, how did we get to 100%? That seems a little high, isn't it?
Well, because are you saying intuition is the same thing as feelings?
I'm saying intuition is it can be feelings. It's essentially relying on a pattern or relying on a thought that you have instead of relying on demonstrable evidence.
I guess I would say that part of that intuition would be something that God has created us with. So with the ability to, obviously, if you go into a place, right, you've probably driven down a road where you don't feel comfortable, right? You feel like I should probably not be driving down this road because it doesn't appear safe, right? That's your intuition. I think that's the way that God wired us to be able to be aware of that, right? So in that sense, I would say, yeah, you should probably get out of that area if you don't feel comfortable and follow your intuition.
But let's say
feelings seem to me a little bit different. Like I have a bad feeling about this or something. You know what I'm saying?
But are there times when intuition is? We already established that intuition can be wrong sometimes. But there are times, right, that having a flawed intuition can hurt people, right?
For sure, yeah.
So then, should I rely solely on that intuition, or should I take further steps to evaluate if my intuition is correct or not?
You should probably take further steps in evaluating if it's correct or not.
So how would I do that in this case?
I guess you would have to ask your reason. You'd probably have to ask yourself, why am I feeling this way, or why is this coming upon me?
Okay. So then after you ask yourself, are there any other ways you can evaluate it? Because it sounds like, I mean, human brains aren't the best all the time. We have bias. We interject things that shouldn't be there. Should we talk
Correct.
to other people? Is there a standardized method that we could gather information that would confirm our intuition or not confirm our intuition?
Yeah, I would definitely. Now, in Scripture, for instance, it says there's wisdom and a multitude of counselors. In other words, what a good idea would be to take what your intuition is telling you and talk to several other individuals and then get confirmation. So, in other words, maybe you talk to 10 different people, which that would be the wisdom of a multitude of counselors. So you talk to 10 people, and maybe 10 people confirm that, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. I would probably go with that. Or would you consider 9 out of 10 say that's a completely stupid idea?
Would you consider that advice from Scripture as exceptional advice and in itself evidence that what you're thinking is true, just because it has come from Scripture?
I'm sorry. Can you say that? Can you repeat that again? I'm trying to process what you're asking.
Yeah, you're saying that you're taking from Scripture this advice that you talk to other people. Would you say that's unique to Christianity and therefore evidence of Christianity because it's in the Christian Scriptures?
I would say, is it unique to Christianity? Probably not, but I would say that
is the correct answer.
I would say pretty much if there's truth to be found in anything, I could pretty much go back to Scripture and find it in Scripture. So I'm saying that Scripture is the source of all truth. So even in other religions or other ideas or whatever, or even in science, there is truth. But when you follow that truth, I could basically show you in Scripture where that truth is found, because I would say all truth leads us back to God being the source of truth.
Okay.
But which God? Because if we can trace that back in the Quran, or we can trace that back in the Tipitaka of Buddhism, or the Vedas of Hinduism, then how do you differentiate which is the correct source, if any of them?
I would say it goes back to the truth of Jesus being God. when
But
he
you're
says,
relying
"I
on the
am the
scripture
way,
to say,
the truth, and the life." There's no other way to the Father or to, except through me. I would say it goes back to Christ.
but
As
Chad,
being
you're
the
relying
source
on
of
the
truth. So when I
scripture,
say,
Chad. You're relying on the Christian scriptures to tell you that, and we've already established that the Christian scriptures aren't reliable as a source of truth in and of themselves. And we can find,
but then what
we can find kind of comparable things in the other religious traditions. So how do we differentiate?
Right. So when I look at other religions or whatever religion, I would say, who do they say that Jesus is? Is he just a good teacher? Was he a moral example? Was he just another prophet? But if you look at any other religion, every other religion will say that Jesus is not God.
Chad, when you seem to kind of be missing the point here a little bit. Jesus is irrelevant in this because Jesus is part of what you believe. So if you've got the Christian scriptures saying Jesus is God, and you've got the Quran saying Allah is God, and you've got the Tipitaka saying essentially there is no creator God, but there is this other set of things which is the truth, and they're all using the same evidential processes. They're all saying, you can cross-reference it, talk to other people to back up your feelings. In the Tipitaka, the Buddhist texts, in the Mahaparinirvana Sutta, it says the Buddha is asked on his deathbed how you will check the truth. And he literally says, those feelings you have inside yourself, that experience, you cross-reference it with what I've taught you and the community around you. So if we're using what you're saying as an evidential basis, we can as equally say everything in Buddhism is as true as everything in Christianity, using the evidential basis that you're giving us. So we can disregard Jesus because what we're talking about is the way we're assessing evidence. So it doesn't matter about Jesus so much. It's the kind of yardstick that you're using as evidence. So what you're saying is evidence for Christianity. Outside of Christianity can be equally viable for something else. So we're still no closer to assessing whether Christianity is the truth. All we've got is it convinces an individual because of the teachings it gives. Now we know that for all religions, it still gets us no closer to the actual truth, which is I would think you're equally as invested in as me and Ben are. We all want to know what the truth is. So how would you differentiate between them? What outside of the Christian scriptures and outside your own feelings is there where you can assess and say, this is what leads me to truth? Because it seems at the minute you're just relying on something which we can just put in. Let's say we've got three holes. One is Christianity, one is Islam, and one is Buddhism. We've got three holes, and the man standing next to each of the holes is saying, jump down my hole. It is the truth. And here is the evidence. And all the evidence is that person saying, this is the truth. This is the evidence. How do we decide which hole to jump into?
How do I mean, and that kind of goes back to my original comment that I can't prove to you, I can't give you evidence. It would have to be God would show you the truth. So in other words, the truth comes from outside of us, inside, and he's the one who reveals the truth to us.
So I have a question here. Going along with this, so if this Bible is the truth, and it is the best representation of the truth, would I be able to manipulate this reality that we're living in and be able to see similar things that we see in the scriptures? Is what we see in the scriptures demonstrable in this reality.
For sure.
Are there
Yes, I
ways that
believe
we
so.
could? Are there ways we could measure that? Could I design some kind of project where we tested if we could observe those same things?
No, because that's where that kind of goes back into that thing of faith, right? It's faith, because even you can't manufacture faith, so you can't create something
But
to give
why
that
do we
give
need?
someone faith.
But why do we need to add something else? If that book is truth, it should be the same truth that I'm experiencing right now. So I should be able to see similar observations in this reality that we do in the scriptures. So why do we need to add another layer to it?
I don't think we need to.
And I agree with you. So that's the scientific method, right?
So, like, what would be a scientific method? What do you mean? What would be a scientific method?
So we had an observation, or we had a question that we wanted to test, or that we wanted to evaluate for truth. And then we set up a scenario where we could explore if the things that we see in the book are consistent with the same things that we see in reality. And then we can calculate some statistics and show, okay, this does line up, or this doesn't line up. Right? Could we do something like that?
Okay, so I could present a case to you, but whether you agree with me or not, that might be a different situation.
It shouldn't matter if we agree with you. That's the beauty of the scientific method. The scientific method it doesn't always work because we have bias, but the scientific method should, in theory, see what I did there? It should kind of give us an independent yardstick which discounts what our personal feelings are. As a good skeptic, as a good scientist, our own feelings on a subject should be irrelevant because the data should be there to show us. And I think that's what Ben's trying to get at. There should be data. If we have this yardstick of science or of the scientific method, it gives us data independent of our own feelings, where we can all say objectively, this is the truth.
Okay, so if I give you a scenario, could you explain it scientifically for me?
It depends on the scenario, and studies involve a lot more work besides finding a pattern. I feel like a lot of people equate science with finding a pattern and going along with it. But patterns are very deceiving, which is why we have things like statistics. So you could give me a scenario and I could run some calculations, or we could put a scenario to a test, but I don't think I could give you a set answer right now. But you can go for it.
Yeah, I'd like to hear it, to be fair.
Yeah.
So I live in Oxford, Michigan, okay? And you might have heard about this on the news. A young man, a 15-year-old student, went into school, which is actually right down the road from where I live, and shot up the school, killed 4 students. Did you hear about that?
Yes.
On the news?
Yes, I did hear about that.
I mean, I didn't, but I'm 5,000 miles away, so.
Okay, it was a school shooting where a kid went in, premeditated, went in and shot students. 11 students shot, 4 killed. So why did that happen? Because now the aftermath is a lot of people are asking, why did this happen, or who's to blame, or they're looking for answers. So what would science say to give someone comfort or help someone to answer that situation?
I don't think comfort is relevant here. It's not about comfort. People make decisions. People do things, and they're not always good. The world has events that happen that don't need to have a significant meaning or a level of comfort for it to be true.
So what? Okay, so take people wanting comfort out of that equation, but people are saying, why? So what would science say? Why did this happen? What would the conclusion be if you followed science?
Some molecules in someone's brain were in a certain place at a certain time, and a person made a decision, and they acted on it, and consequences happened. I don't see where supernatural fits into this.
No, and we have a legal system which deals with cases like this all the time and comes up with reasons as to why these things actually happened. That's why we have criminal investigations and convictions.
Right, for sure. And so when I look biblically, I mean, obviously the reason that God gave the government to us is to punish evildoers. So that's where capital punishment comes into play. But from a biblical perspective, I would say that he was influenced because in the report he was saying, I'm hearing voices in my head, and saying that there's demons in my home and things like this. So what I would say is that would be because of all of us are born as sinners. So he sinned in doing this, and he acted out of anger. And so the result is that he was probably influenced by a demonic spirit.
Hold on. This is problematic. Hold on. So I don't want to get into the weeds on this because I really do not want to perpetuate a stigma that people with schizophrenia are demon possessed. That's something that has harmed people in the past and have ostracized people from society for having psychiatric conditions, which we can demonstrate relates to a concentration of dopamine in the brain. And so I don't know if I want to go down this road for the sake of the audience.
The only point I would make is that I think that biblically there's reasons to why this happened that we can look in scripture and we can find reasons. So
we have reasons outside of the Bible. Chad, we have reasons outside of the Bible. We have a shared reality that we can all agree on. And again, respecting Ben, I don't want to kind of go into it too much, but let's say we have a shared reality. We know that people's brains can not, sometimes don't work correctly or sometimes have imbalances which cause them to go a little bit out. We know that. Ben knows that. I know that. You know that. That is a shared reality. There's no need to add something on top of it to say, but it could have been this external thing as well. We don't need that because we've already got this shared reality that we all agree on. So it's not particularly a good example that you're using because, we've got a foundation that we all agree on. People do suffer from mental illness.
And think about it this way. If we start labeling people with a mental illness that they can't control, if we start labeling it as demon possession, and then we move forward and act on that label that we've assigned them, that could really hurt people, right?
So going back to you said somebody who can't control them. So if he couldn't control himself, why is he held accountable in the court of law? Why is he going to do life in prison?
I'm not here to debate the legal system. I'm not an attorney. That's not my place or expertise to argue about. But here's the thing. If we slapped a label of demon possession on somebody with a mental illness that we know we can manage, things like schizophrenia and psychotic episodes can often be managed with medication. We can correct these imbalances in the brain and people can live normal lives. So we have answers to this through science. And if I were to say that the answer is that this person is demon possessed, I probably would not take the steps to diagnose somebody with an illness or try to find a treatment for them, help them integrate into society and have a productive life. So missing on that would cause serious damage to this person and potentially to other people. So there's a point where we can't just run with the intuition and we need we need to investigate further. These are people's lives on the line.
So let me ask you this. So do you think that science and what I would say scripture, or, scripture or morale, I would say scripture. So do you think that then science and God can work together as opposed to them being like set apart? It seems as though it's either science or God. So do you think that
I think
they work together, or do you think they're separate?
I think science should be used to demonstrate, because science is a methodology. It's not an ideology. It's a method for finding truth. I think we could use science to demonstrate the claims in the scriptures, and if they can be demonstrated, I would be convinced. I'm sure Richard would be convinced.
Yeah, and
but that hasn't happened yet.
No, and a lot of in fact, most of the early Middle Eastern archaeology was from people who were trying to prove God. They were believers, and they were going out and doing this extensive work to say that the Bible was true. But unfortunately, as the work progressed, there just wasn't the evidence there. And that's a way in which science and religion were working together, but the scientific method showed that actually what religion was saying wasn't consistent with reality. And so we don't have to look at them, and I certainly wouldn't look at science and religion as opposing. Some of the greatest scientists in the world are religious. You don't have to. You can separate your faith from the scientific method. I mean, to me, that's kind of flawed, because you're leaving skepticism aside, but that's a whole different conversation. But science and religion do work together.
So let me ask you one more question, if I could. It seems as though a lot of atheists are very anti-religion and hate religion, as though they just completely despise religion. And I'm just curious as to why do you think an atheist, because I'm not going to try to blanket all atheists, but why would an atheist be totally despised to the concept of religion, as though their goal in life is to eradicate the entire world of any type of religion, as though all religion is totally negative and bad and should be completely wiped out?
That's a complex question, and you're certainly talking to one atheist who doesn't despise religion. Most of those books behind me are religious books. I'm doing a degree in religion, philosophy, and ethics, so I certainly don't despise religion. I've got a lifelong passion for religion and religious cultures and things, and anthropology. So yeah, you're certainly talking to one who doesn't. But there are people who've been abused by religion and who've come out of it, and who religion has done real harm to them. And I'm not talking specifically about Christianity, all religions. People have come out of, they've had these experiences. And, in those situations, the left, especially when they first come out of it, they're left with kind of a bitter taste in the mouth, understandably so, as any abused person would be. And that
I agree.
That is pent up anger and aggression, and Ben probably can speak on that more than I can. So I'll shut up and let him talk.
Well, it's not the religion itself necessarily that's the problem. It's the consequences of the religion, and just like we were talking about with schizophrenia and mental illness, we have a whole history of people being harmed by religious thinking.
Right.
And we saw this with example, demon possession, people with schizophrenia, people with epilepsy, people with viral infections that cause neurological symptoms, things that people have no control over, have been labeled in the past as demon possessed, or they've been labeled as sinners that need to be eradicated. People have been harmed, and they continue to be harmed. We're seeing now people utilizing religious ideology to promote transphobia and to promote conversion therapy. And so there are real harms coming from it. So it's not that every religious person is a bad person, or that the religion itself necessarily is the problem. It's the way people think about the world and the actions they take on other people because of those beliefs. And so that's, I think, where a lot of the conflict comes from. I think if a person decided to believe that Jesus was real and they didn't make decisions on behalf of anybody else because of that, I don't think many people would be bothered by it.
No,
Okay. Well, just in closing, go ahead.
No, go on. I was just going to wrap it up, so I'll let you have the last word.
I was just going to say, even myself, being a Christian, I've seen a lot of abuse in churches, and I've seen a lot of abuse within the name of God and in religion, and even people, you know, that I personally know, and I definitely am disgusted by it too. So I agree that it's a terrible thing to see anybody be abused in the name of God or any type of religion, and I totally stand against that. So I'm with you on that. So I appreciate you guys taking my call tonight, and we were kind of all over the place, but man, I enjoyed the conversation.
I'm going to go on the record and say you are my favorite preso of all time.
Oh,
because
same.
You're so open to conversation, and
yes,
you know, when I found out we had a preso on, I'm not going to lie, I had this little part of me that was thinking I was just going to be spoken at, but you haven't. You've been really respectful. We've had a fantastic conversation. I implore you to call back again and continue this conversation, because it's been brilliant. I do so much appreciate you.
I appreciate you guys too.
Right, we'll speak to you again soon. Thank you so much for your call.
Sounds good. Take care.
Ben, what did you make of that?
That was a great conversation. I would happily talk with him again.
That was a great conversation, and you know, and I wasn't lying. It literally is my favorite pre-sub, because if you listen to some pre-subs, they do just come and talk at you, and it's like, no, you believe this and you believe that, and it was very respectful. Hats off to him. That was an amazing call. We do have one caller left, so are we ready to go into this?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so we have got Bob. Is that right?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Hi, thank you for waiting on the line. I appreciate you been waiting for quite a while. What do you want to talk to us about?
Well, I'm going back to the Bigfoot subject.
Right. On a good note here.
I haven't had a sighting. I mean, I have seen what I believe is a footprint. To me, there just seems to be too much evidence to say that it doesn't exist. I believe it's a distinct possibility.
Okay, let's explore this a little bit. Can we play the same little game that we were playing a bit earlier with the whiteboard? I love my whiteboard.
Sure.
All right. So
but I will start off by saying one thing.
Mm-hmm.
I heard you earlier say that every hair sample has been proven to be a bear, and that is absolutely not correct, and I'm sorry. Do a little more research. Many of them have come back saying that it is inconclusive, that they can't determine, and I believe that a lot of that is because they don't have a base sample to say, hey, that's what that is.
Okay, let me amend that then, and just show that, you know, we should amend it when we make mistakes. What I should have said is every example that I know of that has been sampled has turned out to be a bear. There may be those, of course, that I'm not aware of. I do clarify that, and that was a mistake on my part, and thank you for pointing it out.
Yes, sir.
All right. So you saw a footprint. Let's talk a little bit more about the situation. Where did you see this footprint? What's the context?
Well, it was a friend's farm. They knew that I was interested in Bigfoot and stuff, and they had found a footprint out by their chicken coop and stuff, and they put a bucket over it and called my wife, and I went over and looked at it, and it looked like a huge human footprint. I mean, you know, the odd thing was there was only one, but at the same time they had a water leak, and the rest of the ground was pretty hard. You know what I mean? So it was in an area that was soft on the outside of that leak, you know, and it measured about 16.5 to 16 3/4, you know, long. And
inches? I'm
about
assuming
8.5
inches.
inches wide. Yes, sir.
Okay, wanted to clarify because I was like, if it's 16 feet, that would be a different scenario.
Oh no. I'd be insane then.
So if I'm getting this right, you before seeing this footprint, you were already interested in Bigfoot.
Yes.
Do you think there's a
Yes,
possibility that thought might have primed you in a way?
I would have to say, yeah. You know, anytime you truly look into anything, regardless of what it is, you hope to find evidence. I mean, let's be realistic. You know, I try to be subjective, but yes, it very well could have.
And I appreciate you saying that, because yeah, it's anytime that you have a recent thought or recent investigation of something, it's going to stick in your brain, and this happens to everybody. It's called an availability heuristic. Have you heard of something like that?
No. I mean, I've heard of it making a difference, but I didn't know the correct terminology.
Yeah, so your brain comes up with patterns. We are a very pattern-seeking a species. And so when we think of something earlier on, it sticks in our brain. And so the next time we see something that lines up with what we saw previously, we're more likely to associate those two things together.
That makes good sense.
So if we think about this footprint, so we have this footprint at your friend's farm that you believe to be Bigfoot. If that's the primary thing that we're thinking, what are some other possibilities? What else could it be?
I truly don't know of anything that leaves a human-looking footprint that's that huge. So I couldn't answer that question because I can't. Go ahead.
Could somebody have drawn it in the ground?
I just don't think so, because
why not?
The front of, because the front of it was pushed down farther, like it was pushing off. You know, it just seemed to make good sense the way it was.
So that couldn't be. So someone could not replicate a footprint as if it was.
Oh yeah,
pushing off a creature.
You can replicate anything you want. You know, but
so why is that?
I don't believe that they did.
So how is that less likely? How did we? And I'm not trying to debunk anything here. I just want to make the connections for myself.
Sure.
For what convinced you that it was Bigfoot and not somebody drawing a footprint that was really big in the ground?
Well, because I mean, drawing it in my mind, that's an outline. This was several inches deep, probably 3 inches deep. It's pretty hard to, and I'm not saying it's impossible, but it would be difficult to do something like that and not have the outsides of it messed up. You know what I mean? Where, like, I'm trying to think of how to put it. Like, you take anything and you push it down into the mud, you know how it kind of went, the outside of it will still be flat.
How distinct was this footprint? And I'm gonna be a little bit flippant here, so don't take this offensively.
Sure.
I'm just gonna I just want to give give a black and white example just to give you an impression of what I'm talking about. Was it would you call it a fully formed footprint with distinct toes, or was it more like someone wearing a shoe and just leaving a kind of footprint shape, what you'd class as a shoe shape?
A barefoot.
So it was distinct.
No,
There
it
was
was
impressions of toes. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
okay.
it wasn't a shoe. It was 5 toes. And to be honest with you, like I'm retired Army, you know, and I have some foot issues, and they make my shoes for me, and they make a mold of my feet, and they put them into some soft styrofoam and make that mold. And on a much smaller scale, that's what it looked like, if that makes sense to you.
So, thinking about this, if I were to try to figure out if we're going to rule out the possibility of it being someone drawing a footprint, or if we're going to say that it's less likely, is there a way we could test that? Besides saying, I just don't feel like it is that. Is there a way that we could test that?
I don't truly know how I could.
Could you?
If we could, that.
Yeah, could you replicate it? Could you try to draw it yourself?
I personally could not. No, I could not.
How come?
I could not, because I couldn't. Well, for one, I have trouble drawing a straight line, but let's say that I could make a perfect outline. To get 3 inches deep without having any thing off in the pattern. You know, like if you're using a small tool, I would myself.
Well, you don't have to use a small tool. You could use a bigger tool.
Even okay. I just seems like it'd be awful hard to keep them inside lines the way that
wouldn't
they
it?
were.
Do you think it would be
without any tool marks or anything?
Do you think it would be worth investigating that?
Well, yeah, but by the same token, remember I said it was in mud? You know, that there had been a water leak? So that tells me, because when I stood next to it, I left footprints. And the only other footprint was when they noticed it and they grabbed a bucket and put over it to keep any of the animals out of it. So, I mean, there was nothing there where anybody like was on their knees or something like that working on it to make it look like that.
But could you,
and
let's say theoretically, could I grab an artist who knows how, like if I take somebody whose art is drawing in the sand or drawing in the mud, because there are people that do that. There are people whose art is within nature. They like to create art and then take pictures of it. Could I get somebody like that, theoretically, have them try to replicate? Let's say even if you got a picture of this footprint and you showed them, the artist, the picture of this footprint and asked them to replicate it in the mud. Do you think in that case, would you be able to compare what the artist did with what you saw in real life?
Sure.
Would that be a way that you could test it?
You know, I don't think so, because you would have to replicate the surroundings as well. I mean, do I believe that somebody could probably do something like that? Yeah. Okay. But when there's that much mud around it, how do you do that without leaving any trace of you being there? That's I guess my biggest obstacle in saying that it was man-made.
Richard, do you have any thoughts?
I don't know. I just think back to all the great movies that have been made with footprints of aliens and other beings that have been done by special effects artists, and it's not by any means out of the ordinary, to my mind, that a person can replicate something like that. That is a Sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
No, it just seems infinitely more possible to me that someone would replicate it than there being some kind of big, unknown, one-legged Bigfoot hopping around, an 8 foot, 9 foot being hopping around on one leg. I know you said that the other one was trying being rather flippant with you, but I don't know. Just it seems if we're looking at the possibilities,
I don't recall ever saying that it was a 9 foot anything hopping around on one leg and laughing.
No, you didn't. You were. I was being flippant. I apologize.
Yeah, being kind of snarky, but that's all right. I'm just trying to say what I saw, and yes, like I said earlier, somebody could have replicated one. I agreed to that early on. I said I couldn't, but yes, other people I'm sure have the talent to do that.
Yeah,
there's just a lot of evidence, in my opinion. Not just the footprints that I happen to see, but I've had people I know that have had experiences, and they're not here to discuss it, but they've always been forthright in everything that I know of them.
Well, I hate to kind of do this again, but if you'd like to talk about this with someone with more expertise in the field, we've got Bree on next week. Who is kind of, this is their thing, so they'd be able to give you kind of more insights into the kind of anthropological side of it if you were interested in calling back.
Sure. Because I'd be interested. Because I thought it was odd there was only one footprint that I saw, but like I said, it was kind of on the side of where the mud was. The only thing I could think of is maybe it stepped into it and then stepped back out.
Yeah, well, like I said, we appreciate your call, and there is someone who would be able to kind of go into it more deeply with you next week if you'd like to call back. And it's been an absolute joy talking to you, and having 2 Bigfoot calls. We went through a period of having no Bigfoot calls at all, and then we've got 2 in one show. So thank you so much for calling in.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
And
Speak to you soon.
I enjoyed listening to your show while I was waiting.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bree says they're still listening.
I get the impression that Bree's going to come after me.
Oh, no. Bree has told me that they want to take these calls, so they're not going to be mad that we're sending them. This is literally what Bree has asked for.
So, real quick, there is another caller on hold. I want to apologize. Thank you for waiting. We are out of time. If you could call back next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central, I'd be happy to make you the first caller. Once again, I'm sorry we're out of time, but next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central, give us a call back, and we'll happily take your call on the air. Get the 2 hosts next week are Brainbug and Genevieve from That GD Show, which if you haven't checked out yet, I highly recommend. It's on every Monday, 6 p.m. Central. I produce it. It's Dave Warnock and Genevieve's show, and every week they have a different guests. So you guys kicked ass. I gotta say that. Like,
that was a good. We make a good team.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we had several comments came in saying that you made a good team. And we had a wide variety of calls, which was awesome. That's my favorite, is when it's just a different topic each call. Those are so much fun.
I never get the religious calls when I'm on. I always get the ghosts and the aliens. So I'm glad I was in my comfort zone a little bit tonight.
Well, and fun. I have to agree with you, Richard. Chad is my favorite precept too.
Yeah, great guy.
Yeah, definitely. Any closing thoughts?
Ben?
No, not really.
Okay. What do you guys got coming up? Oh, wait, I made a promise. I forgot. Someone sent me some Bigfoot photos, and I said I would show them. So let me put them on screen right now.
Oh, yes.
If it's even something, and my eyes aren't deceiving me, that looks more like a gorilla or ape than anything. I'm going to put the second one on screen. And that's one of the biggest issues with these, Bigfoot experiences Bigfoot evidence is it's always really, really blurry photos. We never get clear ones.
Yep.
I mean, you wouldn't want to hang around in an area with a big 10-foot man beast running down a hill at you, though, would you? You're not going to hang around to like take a David Bailey shot at it with all the lights.
So what do you guys have coming up?
Yeah, it's a busy month for me. So this Friday at 6 p.m. Central Time, Secular Rarity and I will be talking about why not to drink your own pee. It's going to be a fun talk. And then right after that, we're going to have trivia for our weekly Friday night trivia on my Twitch. And then also something really fun. Next Thursday, I will be on Secular Sexuality. So my first time on an ACA show. So definitely stop by. It's going to be fun. We're going to talk about biological sex. So
that's
amazing.
Awesome. I look forward to it.
A good one. Yeah. We've got the Skeptic hangout tomorrow. Me, Laura, McGee, and Teo El Mateo guesting. On Sunday, I'm doing the non-profits, and on Monday, Ethan, I'm on with Rick Lockhart, I think, on your Atheist versus Theist calling show, which I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, it's going to be a good time. I'm really, really enjoying. So for those that don't know, I brought back a show I've been trying to do for a while, AVT, which is Atheist versus Theist. It is a show where we have an atheist and a theist co-hosting together. It is a call-in show, so you can call in and get two completely different perspectives. I am looking for more theist podcasters, so if you know someone that is a theist of any kind, any denomination, please send them my way, because I only know so many. Also would like to thank our top tier patrons: City Plaza, Left, Right, Left, Ryan Hammond, Kenneth Leonard, Skye, Secular Rarity, Philip Leitch, Richard Gilliver, _ Atheism, Ameet, Mathew, and Ray Sylvester. Thank you so much for your patronage. Ameet, Mathew, thank you for the $5 super chat. Did you all know that Ben is almost at 1,000 subs? Well, his link is in the description of this video, so go there and sub now. Also, for those who don't know, we do a Discord after show, which I'm assuming you both will be a part of. Hopefully. Awesome. So right after here, we go onto Discord. If you're not a part of our Discord, the link is also in the description of the video. Join us there now. And thanks for tuning in, and have a wonderful week.